There is a quiet force shaping every life, yet most people move through their days without ever noticing it. It does not appear in the world as something visible or tangible. It cannot be measured like money, status, or possessions. Yet it silently directs the course of a person's character, behavior, and destiny. This force is thought. James Allen taught that the mind is not merely a place where thoughts appear and disappear at random. The mind is a creative center. It is a workshop where the patterns of life are slowly designed. Each thought that is accepted and repeated becomes part of the structure of the mind itself. Most people believe that life is shaped primarily by circumstances. They look at their environment, their upbringing, or the actions of other people and assume these things determine their future. But Allen suggested something far deeper. Circumstances do not create the person. They reveal the person. Behind every action, every habit, and every decision lies a pattern of thinking that has been quietly forming over time. The thoughts a person allows to remain in the mind eventually shape the direction of their life. If a person repeatedly entertains thoughts of doubt, resentment, fear, or limitation, those thoughts gradually become familiar companions. They settle into the mind like seeds planted in soil. At first they may appear harmless, almost invisible, but over time they grow into attitudes, reactions, and habits. Eventually those habits begin shaping a person's experience of the world. This is why two people can face the same situation yet respond in completely different ways. The difference does not come from the situation itself. It comes from the invisible landscape of the mind. The thoughts that a person tolerates slowly build the framework of their character. This process happens quietly. It does not announce itself with dramatic changes. It works slowly, almost imperceptibly, day by day. But over the course of months and years, the thoughts a person allows eventually become the life they live. James Allen believed that once a person understands this principle, they begin to see life differently. Instead of feeling powerless in the face of circumstance, they recognize a deeper responsibility. They realize that the mind is not simply a passive receiver of thoughts. It is a gatekeeper. Every thought that enters the mind must either be accepted, rejected, or repeated, and the thoughts that are repeated eventually shape the future. Most people are careful about the things they allow into their homes. They lock their doors, protect their possessions, and guard the safety of their environment. Yet many people allow their mind to remain completely unguarded. Thoughts arrive constantly. Some are helpful, constructive, and creative. Others are negative, fearful, or destructive. If these thoughts are accepted without awareness, they gradually begin influencing the way a person sees the world. James Allen often compared the mind to a garden. A garden does not choose what grows within it. Seeds arrive through the wind, through the soil, and through outside influence. If the gardener ignores the garden long enough, weeds will eventually take control. The same principle operates within the mind. Thoughts that are repeated begin taking root. If a person repeatedly entertains thoughts of bitterness, frustration, or resentment, those thoughts begin shaping their emotional responses. They influence how the person interprets events and how they react to other people. Eventually, those thoughts become part of the person's identity. But the same principle works in the opposite direction as well. If a person begins consciously choosing thoughts of clarity, patience, discipline, and purpose, those thoughts slowly reshape the structure of the mind. This process requires awareness. Many people attempt to change their life without ever changing the thoughts that guide their actions. They attempt to force new results while repeating the same internal patterns. But lasting change begins in a quieter place. It begins with the thoughts a person allows to remain within their mind. James Allen believed that when a person takes responsibility for their thinking, they begin reclaiming the direction of their life. The mind becomes less chaotic. Reactions become less impulsive. Decisions become more deliberate. Gradually, the person begins acting from intention rather than habit. And with each new thought chosen carefully, the future begins shifting in a new direction. Character is not formed in a single moment. It is formed slowly through repeated patterns of thought and action. Each time a person reacts to life in a certain way, that reaction strengthens the underlying pattern that produced it. Over time, these patterns become automatic. The person begins responding to situations without consciously thinking about it. This is how habits are formed. But every habit begins as a thought. A thought repeated often enough eventually becomes a belief. That belief influences behavior. Behavior repeated often enough becomes character, and character ultimately shapes destiny. This chain of influence is rarely visible in the moment. People usually notice the results long after the patterns that created them have already taken root. James Allen encouraged people to reverse this process by examining the thoughts they allow themselves to entertain. Instead of waiting for life to produce unwanted outcomes, a person can begin observing the patterns forming in their mind today. Which thoughts appear most often? Which thoughts dominate the internal conversation? Which thoughts shape the way a person interprets success, failure, opportunity, and challenge? When a person becomes aware of these patterns, they gain the ability to change them. Thoughts that weaken the mind can be replaced with thoughts that strengthen it. Fear can be replaced with understanding. Confusion can be replaced with clarity. Reaction can be replaced with intention. This is not an instant transformation. It is a gradual process of mental discipline. But over time, the direction of the mind begins changing. And as the mind changes, life begins changing with it. One of the most powerful realizations a person can have is that thoughts are not permanent residents of the mind. They are visitors. Some visitors should be welcomed. Others should be shown the door. James Allen believed that many of the struggles people experience come from allowing certain thoughts to remain far longer than they should. A passing doubt becomes a repeated fear. A moment of frustration becomes a lasting resentment. A temporary disappointment becomes a belief about the nature of life itself. But these patterns only grow stronger when they are repeated. The mind becomes what it consistently rehearses. When a person learns to interrupt destructive patterns of thinking, they weaken the hold those patterns have on the mind. This does not mean ignoring difficulty or pretending life is always easy. It means refusing to allow destructive thoughts to dominate the internal landscape. A person who learns to guide their thinking begins reclaiming their inner authority. Instead of being pulled by every emotional reaction, they begin choosing their responses deliberately. And as those responses change, new patterns begin forming. The mind slowly becomes calmer, clearer, and more focused. Over time, this inner change begins appearing in the outer world as well. Decisions improve, relationships improve, opportunities appear where none seemed to exist before. This is not magic. It is the natural result of directing the mind with purpose rather than leaving it to chance. The future is rarely shaped by dramatic moments. More often, it is shaped by small decisions repeated quietly over time. Each thought a person chooses to accept is one of those small decisions. A person may believe their thoughts are insignificant, but over the course of a lifetime, those thoughts accumulate into powerful patterns. Those patterns influence everything that follows. The thoughts a person allows today will influence the choices they make tomorrow. Those choices will influence the direction of their life. James Allen believed that the moment a person recognizes this principle, they gain an extraordinary form of freedom. They no longer need to wait for circumstances to change before improving their life. They can begin changing their thinking immediately. Every time a person replaces a destructive thought with a constructive one, they are altering the future. Every time they respond with patience instead of anger, clarity instead of confusion, or discipline instead of impulse, they strengthen a new mental pattern. Over time, those patterns become part of their character, and that character begins shaping their destiny. This is the quiet power of thought. The thoughts you allow today eventually become the life you live tomorrow. So the question becomes simple, yet profound. What thoughts will you allow to remain in your mind? Because whatever you allow to grow within your mind will eventually begin growing within your life. There is a moment that eventually comes to every person who begins studying the nature of thought. It is the moment when they realize that many of the difficulties they experience are not created by the outside world, but by the inner habits of the mind. At first, this realization can feel uncomfortable. It challenges a belief that many people hold for most of their lives, the belief that circumstances control everything. But James Allen suggested something very different. He taught that circumstances reveal the inner condition of the mind far more than they control it. Two individuals may live in the same environment, face the same difficulties, and experience the same challenges. Yet their reactions can be completely different. One person becomes discouraged, resentful, and defeated. The other becomes stronger, calmer, and more determined. The difference is not found in the situation itself. The difference lies in the thoughts each person allows to dominate their mind. When a person repeatedly focuses on limitations, they begin seeing limitations everywhere. When they focus on obstacles, every opportunity appears blocked. The mind slowly builds a picture of reality that reflects the thoughts it repeats most often. But when a person begins directing their thinking with intention, the world begins appearing differently. Challenges become opportunities for growth. Difficulty becomes instruction. Failure becomes information rather than defeat. This shift does not occur because the outside world suddenly changes. It occurs because the inner perspective changes, and perspective is one of the most powerful forces shaping human behavior. A person who believes they are powerless tends to act with hesitation and fear. A person who believes they are capable tends to act with confidence and determination. Those actions accumulate over time. Small decisions begin leading toward different outcomes. James Allen believed that this is how destiny is quietly shaped, not through dramatic turning points, but through thousands of small mental decisions made every day. Each time a person chooses patience over anger, clarity over confusion, or discipline over impulse, they strengthen a new mental pattern. Those patterns eventually define their character, and character, over time, defines the direction of a life. This is why the thoughts you allow today matter far more than most people realize, because every thought you accept is helping design the life you will eventually experience. The discipline of thought is not about controlling every idea that enters the mind. Thoughts will always appear spontaneously. The mind constantly generates impressions, memories, fears, hopes, and reactions. No one can prevent thoughts from appearing, but what a person can control is what they choose to repeat. James Allen often emphasized that repetition is what gives thoughts their power. A single passing doubt has little influence. A single moment of anger fades quickly. But when a thought is repeated again and again, it begins carving a pathway in the mind. That pathway becomes easier to follow each time it is used. This is how beliefs form. A belief is nothing more than a thought that has been repeated enough times to feel true. And once a belief is accepted, it begins influencing behavior in subtle ways. A person who believes success is impossible rarely takes the actions required to achieve it. A person who believes growth is possible tends to pursue opportunities that reinforce that belief. Over time, the results begin matching the expectations. This is why James Allen described the mind as a creative instrument. The mind does not simply observe life, it participates in shaping it. Every belief held in the mind becomes a lens through which reality is interpreted. If that lens is clouded by fear, resentment, or doubt, the world appears hostile and limiting. If the lens is shaped by clarity, patience, and purpose, the world appears full of possibility. The external world may remain exactly the same, yet the internal experience of life becomes completely different. This is the quiet power of thought. When a person begins observing their thinking with awareness, they gain the ability to redirect it. Old patterns can be replaced. New beliefs can be built. And gradually, the direction of the mind begins shifting. With enough time and consistency, the life that once felt controlled by circumstance begins reflecting a new internal order. That is the deeper meaning behind James Allen's philosophy. The thoughts you allow do not remain confined to the mind. Eventually, they begin shaping the life you live.